I spent over $300 on lab grade grow lights, and it turns out that they were completely unnecessary. Womp womp. That's just one of 4 things that I got totally wrong when I first started doing plant tissue culture. If you're trying to grow better plants and, more importantly, prevent wasting your money, then stick around to hear these 4 common mistakes and how to avoid them. Before we get into it, if you've never seen me before, my name is Lore and I do plant tissue culture. Duh. Tissue culture or micropropagation is a method of rapidly cloning plants. Typically, it's done in a laboratory, but I've pretty much perfected a method for doing it very cheaply at home. I also have a website, plantsinjars.shop, where I sell all of the ingredients to make tissue culture media, which is the gel that the plants clone themselves in. Okay, let's get into it. Mistake number 1, overspending on lighting. Big Light hates this one easy trick. One of the more common questions that I get asked is, what kind of lights do I need to grow tissue culture plants? A few years ago, I spent a lot of money on the lighting setup that you see behind me. The top 2 shelves contain cylinder lights from a company called Horty Power. They are the 48-inch Nurser 3 grow lights, which were $69 each. So $272 dollars total.
Nope.
I literally ran out of money to do the rest of the shelves with the Nurser 3 grow lights. So the lower 2 shelves were just LED cylinders that I got from Amazon. They're just cheap Chinese LEDs. Here's the sitch. Lighting doesn't really matter when it comes to tissue culture. Plants in TC don't photosynthesize efficiently like a mature plant would. TC plants are grown in jars with very limited access to CO2, which is essential for photosynthesis. Without CO2 or enough CO2, even if there's plenty of light hitting your plants, the plants can't run the Calvin cycle effectively. The Calvin cycle is the process plants use to turn carbon dioxide into sugar, using energy from sunlight. So even if you're blasting the plants with light, they're not going to photosynthesize because they're missing that key ingredient, the CO2. In tissue culture, plants rely on getting their sugar from the tissue culture media rather than getting it from sunlight. The fact that lighting doesn't really matter is really great news for anyone who's currently building out a tissue culture setup. It's really bad news for anyone like me who already spent $300 on grow lights. A few weeks ago, I toured AgriStarts, which is one of the largest tissue culture laboratories in the entire United States, and they use very basic Philips cylinder shop lights for all of their tissue culture plants, regardless of the type of plant. They all get the same exact light. You can buy those lights in bulk for like $5 each. They're very inexpensive. AgriStarts also stacks their jars 3 jars high, and they say that they don't notice a difference in growth between the plants at the top of the stack, which receive a lot of light, and the plants at the bottom of the stack, which receive very limited light, which I thought was really interesting. I used to think grow lights were essential, but it turns out they're just mood lighting for plants, at least for tissue culture plants. Mistake number 2, when you overdo the goo. And by that I mean using too high of a concentration of your gelling agent in the tissue culture media. The media is the substrate that the plants are growing in. In order to get it to solidify so that it's not a liquid, you add a gelling agent. Agar is the gelling agent that I use the most often. I find it the easiest to use for home use. Most tissue culture media recipes will call for between 6 to 8 grams of agar per liter, but I would recommend you stay on the lower end of that spectrum. A softer, looser gel actually helps your plants grow faster, and here are some studies to back that up. This one is from 1982, which is obviously like pretty old, but I like how it illustrates the difference in plant growth using different concentrations of agar. I used to always recommend 7 grams per liter, which is right in the middle of that 6 to 8 grams range. And that's what most of the protocols in the Plants in Jars protocol library call for. But recently I've been testing out using 6 grams per liter instead. So I'll keep experimenting over the next couple months, and if it consistently is working better, then I will go back and change all the Plants in Jars protocols to use just a little bit less agar. Also, if you're new here and you're like, Plants in Jars protocols, what is she talking about? I sell everything to make tissue culture media on my website, plantsinjars.shop. The starter kit includes the 5 chemicals that you need to grow all of these plants, which are listed here. These are called protocols, and a protocol is essentially just a set of instructions for tissue culturing a certain type of plant. The plants in jars protocols are much easier to read than protocols you'll find for free on ResearchGate or Google Scholar, because I format them like cookbook style recipes that anyone can pick up and get started with. The protocol library is dynamic, so I'm always adding more. Actually, earlier this week, I added a new alocasia from Quorum protocol. If you already purchased the protocol library, you get access to the new protocols when they come out, and access to the protocol library is included whenever you purchase anything from my website, even just a t-shirt. If you live outside of the United States and you can't purchase anything physically from me, I also offer just digital access to the protocol library as well. I'll have everything linked in the description of this video. Mistake number 3, poor explant placement. No floaters allowed. This is another tip I learned from my trip to AgriStarts. For the best possible growth, your plants need good contact with the media. That means pressing them firmly down into the media instead of just letting them float on top or letting them sit loosely on top. You want them really anchored to the bottom of the jar. Better contact with the media leads to better exposure to moisture, to nutrients, to hormones, and this results in better plant growth in general. AgriStarts has a general rule where they place the baby plants 2/3 into the media, 1/3 out of the media, and then they allow the plant to grow up from there. That's actually deeper than I typically place the plants when I do tissue culture, but I am planning to implement that in the future. Mistake number 4, not subculturing often enough. So tissue culture media contains everything that plants need to grow and to multiply, but over time, plants are using up these nutrients and hormones that are in the media, and we need to replenish them so that the plants can continue to grow. So that means TC plants need fresh media every so often to replace the nutrients and hormones that have been used up. The process of moving plants or plant material onto fresh media is called subculturing, or also sometimes called a sterile transfer. Typically, I tell people to subculture their plants every 4 to 6 weeks. Sometimes I'll say 4 to 8 weeks, but realistically, more close to every 4 weeks is going to give you the best, most consistent plant growth. Tissue culture plants don't grow at a steady rate. They grow in waves. Right after you subculture them, they get hits of nutrients and hormones and more sugar, so they grow. And then over time, they're starting to deplete those nutrients, so the growth is slowing down. Then you subculture them again here, and that growth picks up again. And then over time, goes back down. So you kind of get this wave. Subculturing the plants more often cuts off that downward slope before it even begins. So your growth looks more like this than this, and you get more consistent growth. I don't know. Does the wave thing make sense to people? It makes sense in my head. Maybe I'll draw a little graph to try to help visualize what I'm doing with my hands here. Subculturing every 4 weeks gives plants more steady access to nutrients and hormones that it needs to grow. This results in faster, steadier, more predictable growth, especially if you're trying to bulk up your stock supply very quickly. If you want to get started with tissue culture at home, I will have a beginner tutorial below that shows you how to use the Plants in Jars starter kit. I'll also include an Amazon link, which includes everything you need for an inexpensive beginner home laboratory. And if you guys are interested in learning more about tissue culture, 1, I have like a billion videos on this channel, so check those out. 2, a book called Plants from Test Tubes is a fantastic resource. Read it front to back, even though it's nonfiction, and nonfiction is boring. And lastly, I also have a Discord server. I think we're almost at like 4,500 members, which is crazy. Anyways, I have to go. It's almost time for the Pop Mart live stream, and I'm trying to get a Labubu. I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!